At this point, I'd like to call on opening announcements.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the district court.
Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Dool.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
McKay is absent. Green is absent. Bill Johnson.
Here.
Blick.
Here.
Nix is absent. Fox.
Here.
Warren.
Here.
Joe Johnson's my understanding.
He's in the building. He was stuck inside the building, so.
Okay,
yeah, I just
making
got
his
him
way
out.
here.
He
Do
is.
we-
He's making his way up.
Okay. Do we need to send anyone to go rescue him? Okay, we'll be all right. So he will be here shortly, but for now he's absent. Miles.
Here.
Zimbelman. Aldrich.
Here.
Williams Bay.
Here.
I show 10 members present and 4 absent with 1 on the way.
Thank you. We have a quorum. And now I would like to call for an approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes that we're pretty much caught up to date with now, I think. The first is October 12th, and I show that I was absent on that. Nix and Zimmelman were absent.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion from Miles and a second from Blick. Williams Bay, I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Now we will take the minutes from October 26th And here I show that Foster, Nix, and Miles were absent.
Move to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second. Aye.
Opposed, the same sign, motion carries. Okay, now we will go through and see what cases we can take on consent. We will have a BZA meeting after we go through the consent items. So first of all, under subdivision recommendations, we have 2.1 sub 2023-00045. It's a one-step final plat on KWH 3 edition located at the northeast corner of North 55th Street West and West 81st Street North. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone want to hear this case? Is there anyone from the public that's present that wants to hear this case? If not, we'll take that one on consent. The next one is 2.2 subdivision 2023-00046. One-step final plat on hydraulic and 47th edition located on the northeast corner of East 47th Street South and South Hydraulic Avenue. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone from the public present that would like to hear this case? Anyone from the public? If not, we'll take that one on consent. Okay, we'll hear that case. The next one is 2.3 subdivision or sub 2 2023-00048. One-step final plat on Hoheisel Edition located on the south side of West 63rd Street, approximately half mile west of South 263rd Street in the county. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone from the public that would like to hear this case? Anyone from the public present? Okay, we'll take that one on consent.
Chairman, I would move to approve items 2.1 and 2.3 per staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion by Fox and a second by Miles. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next, we'll take public hearing vacation items. 3.1 is vacation 2023-00042, vacation request in the city to vacate a drainage easement to allow for proposed site and building improvements on property zoned LC, limited commercial, generally located on the northeast corner of East Terry Street and South Oliver. Is there anyone on the commission who would like to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone from the public present that would like to hear this case? Anyone from the public? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve taking this case on consent.
Second.
Joe? Second. I think Joe Johnson moved and Mr. Blick seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to the public hearing items. We will hear 4.1. This has come back to us from the county commission. Also, 4.2 has been deferred. 4.3, we will hear this because it's a staff denial case. So then moving on to 4.4, it's CON 2023-00055, conditional use request in the county for an accessory apartment on property zoned RR Rural Residential District, generally located on the north side of West 15th Street South and 1/2 mile east of South 283rd Street West. Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone present from the public that wants to hear this case? Anyone from the public? We'll take that case on. Next is 4.5 is the CUP 2023-00033. CUP minor amendment in the city to amend the proposed uses of subject parcel to include vehicle and equipment sales, to allow the rental of moving trucks from self-storage facility located approximately 875 feet west of North Mays Road on 21st Street North. Does anyone from the commission want to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone from the public that wants to hear this case? Anyone want to hear this case? If not, we'll take that one on consent. Next case is 4.6. It's a ZON 2023-00058. Zone change request in the city from SF5 single family residential to GC general commercial for a restaurant located on the east side of South Ridge Road and within 1 block of West Taft. Is there anyone on the council that on the commission that wants to hear this case? Anyone on the commission? Is there anyone from the public that wants to hear this case that's here? Anyone from the public? We'll take that one on consent. And then we have 4.7. It's ZON 2023-00059. Zone change request in the city from TF3 to MF29 to allow for multiple duplexes generally located 2 blocks west of South Meridian on and 1/4 mile south of West Kellogg. Anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Does anyone on the commission want to hear this case? Anyone from the public here want to hear this case? Anyone from the public? Okay, we'll take that one on consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
Move to approve items 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, and 4.7 per staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion by Foster and a second by Mr. Bill Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now, we will go back to the beginning and we will temporarily adjourn the Planning Commission meeting and go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You should all have that in your packet on the blue sheet. The first thing we have is approval of the BZA minutes from September 28th.
Move to approve.
I show that Nix was absent on that one. Okay, we have a motion from Miles, a second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The second one is BZA 2023-00028. We will hear that case.
Mic work? Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Christina Reith with planning staff. This is case number BZA 2023-00028. The applicant is requesting a variance to the Unified Zoning Code to reduce a side setback from 6 feet to 3 feet and reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 0.6 feet to bring a rear addition in compliance for a property in the SF5 single-family residential district. It is 0.14 acres in size and located at 212 North Elizabeth Avenue. Article 3, Section 5D6 of the Unified Zoning Code states that the interior side setback in SF5 zoning for main structures or any structures attached to the main structure is 6 feet and the rear setback is 20 feet. And in this case, they're asking for 3 feet and 0.6 feet respectively. The property at 212 North Elizabeth Avenue is developed with a single-family dwelling, a carport, a formerly detached garage now connected to the principal structure via breezeway, and a rear addition off the garage. The site plan shows that the rear addition is 3.4 feet from the south property line at its closest point and 0.6 feet from the eastern property line at its closest point. Skipping ahead here to the case history. On September 28th, the Board of Zoning Appeals granted one variance to the property owner to bring the existing carport into compliance, and that was BZA 2023-00028 as well. The BZA, however, voted to defer the decision on the other variance, which is what I'm speaking about today, for the rear addition to today. So let's go through the 5 criteria. 1, this request is unique to the property and was not created by the applicant. Staff analysis. The applicant has provided documentation that a sewer line runs through the middle of the property. Therefore, a rear addition could not be constructed directly behind the existing structure within the setback requirements. The granting of the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents. The applicant states that the reduction in setbacks for the rear addition will have no adverse effect on the rights of adjacent property owners because they are built within the property lines. Staff is in agreement with the applicant's statement. The alley serves as a buffer. I'm just going to point out the alley here. It serves as a buffer between the subject site and the property to the east. The strict application of the provisions of the code would constitute an unnecessary hardship on the applicant. The applicant states that the strict application of the code will result in an unnecessary hardship because it would not allow the opportunity for the applicant to enlarge his home. Staff is in agreement with the above statement. Because of the existing aforementioned sewer line in the rear of the property and the setback requirements in single-family residential district zoning, the applicant will not be able to enlarge his home directly behind the main structure. The variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, general welfare, or harmonious development of the community. The applicant states that there is no adverse effect to the items listed in this criteria. The rear addition was built with utmost craftsmanship to match the existing property and to continue harmonious development within the community. Staff agrees with the applicant on the aforementioned criteria. The addition is architecturally compatible with the principal structure and continues a harmonious development of the community. 5, the granting of the variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the code. Staff is not in agreement with the applicant's statement. The variance request is being considered because the addition has already been built without building permits and is out of compliance with the Unified Zoning Code. The recommendation from staff is that the variance to reduce the rear setback from 20 feet to 0.6 feet, as well as a side setback, does not meet the 5 criteria required to grant a variance. Should the board determine that all 5 conditions necessary to the granting of the variance can be found to exist, it is a recommendation of the Secretary that the following variance for the reduction in the rear setback and side setback is granted with the following conditions. 1, the building shall be in substantial conformance with the approved site plan. And 2, building permits shall be obtained from MAPC. Now let's go through some of the photos here. This is an aerial of the existing subject site. Next slide, please. This is the Wichita Future Growth Concept Map that identifies it as appropriate for residential uses. Next slide, please. This is the initial site plan that was submitted by the applicant that shows that it's 3 feet 4 inches from the property line. Next slide, please. This was done by a professional surveyor that confirms those measurements from earlier. Next slide, please. This is looking north towards the site. Next slide, please. This is looking east towards the site. Next slide, please. This is looking south towards the site. Next slide, please. This is looking west towards the site, towards the addition. This was taken from the alleyway. Next slide, please. This is a photo that was submitted by the applicant that, if you can see the orange marks on the ground here, that is where the sewer line exists. Next slide, please. This is looking north away from the site. Next slide, please. This is looking east away from the site. This is at the alley from the adjacent property. Next slide, please. And this is looking south away from the site. Do I have any more site photos? Next slide, please. Oh, this is looking west away from the site. Next slide, please. And that concludes the photos. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Is there any questions for staff from the board? Yes, Ms. Foster.
Christina, 2 questions. On this aerial, the site immediately to the south, which appears to be a separate parcel, has like white buildings stretching along the alley. Is that, what are those, and do they in fact reach right to the alley right-of-way line?
I would have to, let me double check the zoning on that. Oh, it is zoned SF5. That is interesting. I don't know what those buildings are.
Okay. Second question is, just to confirm what you've written in the report here, if this garage was not attached to the house by a breezeway, this would be in compliance?
Well, it would still not be in compliance, but it would be considered an accessory structure, and accessory structures can be within 3 feet of the property line.
So the number 5 criteria would be met except for the breezeway?
No, because it's still 0.6 feet from the rear property line. It has to be at
Okay.
least 3 feet from the property line.
Okay, so it's the 3 feet on the side property line instead of this, but the breezeway makes it 6.
Yes, because
All right,
it's
I'm
an attached.
confused.
So the variance for the carport, I believe that, and feel free to clarify this for me, Philip, but that approved the side setback requirement because a carport is attached to the new addition. What we're talking about here is the rear setback, which is 0.6 feet. And so that's what the variance request is for,
0.6 feet or 6 feet?
0.6 feet.
Thank you.
So I guess, how does this change if, as far as us allowing a variance, if this is not in fact a garage? Because I know we confirmed at a prior meeting that this in fact is not a garage, but additional living quarters.
It's still considered to be an attached structure to the main house. So it has to comply with all of the setbacks for a main structure. So that would be 20 feet for a rear setback and then 6 feet for a side setback.
But
Does
would
that-
they not need to get a building permit specifically for an accessory structure?
No, they would have to get one for an attached structure.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of staff at this point from the commission? If not, we will call the agent or applicant, and you will have 10 minutes to present, and please state your name and address.
Name's Angel Huerta. The address obviously is 212 North Elizabeth. I'm here on behalf of my dad, Jose Huerta. And I just want to say that, as previously stated, the building was obviously put out without permits. We've done what we've been asked to do so far, and if approved, like I said, we will get whatever permits we need to make this right and done the right way for actual approval.
Are there any questions of the applicant from the commission? Does anyone have any? Yes, Mr. Williams Bay.
Yes, is there any reason why this was built without a permit?
To be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I know my dad has stated in the past when we had an addition done on the front of the house that I can't confirm or deny that the inspector at that point said anything inside our property lines we didn't have to have. But like I said, I'm not 100% sure on who said that, but that's just what he was told. That's what I'm going off of. But like I said, we're willing to get whatever permits we need to do this.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Yes, Mr. Aldridge.
But nobody ever bothered to contact the proper authorities to find out whether or not you needed permits or not, correct?
That's correct.
Any other questions from the commission? Is there anyone from the public that would like to ask a question at this point? Not, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion and action. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I guess I want to back up the first time we heard this case, because this is the third time now. Basically, at that time, it seemed like we were in agreement, but there wasn't a very good site plan. We directed the owner to go get a site plan. He did it, brought it back a second time. We got off on a bunch of tangents and all of a sudden denied it. After the meeting, and I wished I'd have spoken up before we took a vote, but I think that was a disservice to that individual. And so I'm in favor of supporting what the applicant wants. The building's not as close to the alley as a building to the north or south. It's right on the alley. And this isn't the first building that's been built in Wichita without a building permit. We hear these cases all the time.
Second. So was that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Bill Johnson and a second from Mr. Blick. Johnson, excuse me. Any further discussion? Yes, Scott.
Just a quick question to clarify on the motion. So as part of the motion, you're finding that all 5 criteria
Yes.
have been satisfied. And you're also recommending that the 2 conditions would apply that are listed in the staff report?
Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
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 We have, by your count, excuse
We
me,
have-
go ahead.
We have 8 yays and 3 nays, being Miles, Blick, and Williams Bay.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to the second BZA case, number 00058. Can we hear the staff presentation on that?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is case number BZA 2023-00058. The applicant is requesting a variance to install a sign that extends over the sidewalk and that is less than 10 feet above the sidewalk. The property is a little bit over half an acre in size and located at 303 South Broadway. So the subject site is zoned CBD Central Business District and is developed with an apartment and office complex that was constructed in 1949. The Wichita Sign Code, says that no sign shall project over public right-of-way except projecting signs permitted on buildings located within 8 feet of the right-of-way line. And the bottom of the proposed signage will sit 9 feet off the ground. And then no part of any projecting sign extending over public property shall be less than 10 feet from the surface immediately below. And the sign will project almost 4.5 feet from the northeast corner of the building. The applicant here requests to install one 3.5 foot by 17 foot double-faced internally illuminated sign on the northeast corner of the property. The purpose of the variance request is to advertise a business on site, the Wichita Foundation. A little bit of case history here. In July of this year, the Wichita Historic Preservation Board approved the design for the signage that is proposed in this report. That is HPC 2023-00057. So let's go through the 5 criteria. 1, the request is unique to this property and was not created by the applicant. The applicant states that a unique condition exists due to the vacation of Broadway Avenue, which resulted in a small area between the right-of-way and the building. This was not created by the applicant. Additionally, the additional structural support causes the lower portion of the sign to be included in the entire sign, which is unique and creates a safer sign. Staff is not in agreement with the applicant's statement. The vacation of a portion of the west side of South Broadway Avenue, it reduced the amount of right-of-way between the roadway and the building, but it does not affect the height, location, or clearance of the sign. 2, the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents. The applicant states that the new sign will have no adverse effects on the rights of the adjacent property owners because there is already a sign that extends over the sidewalk. Staff is not in agreement with the applicant's statement. This variance could provide additional sign rights to this property that have not been given to other properties. And the parking sign that you see on the building, it meets the height requirement. 3, the strict application of the provisions of the sign code would constitute an unnecessary hardship on the applicant. The applicant states that the vacation of Broadway and the construction of the building prevent any signs from being mounted onto the building. Staff is not in agreement with the applicant's statement. The applicant has the option of installing a stud mounted sign that is flush with the wall or window signs. Instead, they are choosing to advertise their business with a projecting sign. Additionally, the applicant could alter the design of the sign to meet the height requirement of the sign code. It is staff's opinion that this hardship is self-imposed. 4, the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, morals, order, convenience, prosperity, general welfare, or harmonious development of the community. The sign is well designed and not overly large. It fits into the development of the area of the Central Business District. Staff is not in agreement with the applicant's statement. The sign code established heights based on how far the sign projects are determined to be safe placements of the signs. 5, granting of the variance will not be opposed to the general spirit and intent of the sign code. In an attachment provided by the applicant, the interim city engineer states that he does not foresee any issues with the placement of the sign. Staff is in agreement with the applicant's statement. Because the interim city engineer evaluated the sign for its clearance and determined that the proposed height should not create any safety issues, it is upholding the spirit and intent of the code. The recommendation of the staff is that the variance to install a sign that extends over the sidewalk and that is less than 10 feet above the sidewalk does not meet the 5 criteria required to grant a variance. Should the board determine that all 5 conditions necessary to the granting of the variance can be found to exist, then it is the recommendation of the secretary that the following variance for the increase in sign area be granted with the following conditions. 1, the sign shall be constructed in substantial conformance with the approved site plan and conceptual images. And 2, a sign permit shall be obtained. Let's go through some of the site photos here. This is an aerial of the proposed, or where the proposed signage is going to be. Next slide, please. This is the Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, identifying the areas appropriate for residential and employment mix. Next slide, please. This is some conceptual renderings of the Wichita Foundation sign that were provided by the applicant. Next slide, please. Here are some more renderings. Next slide, please. This is where the proposed signage will be installed. You can see it adjacent to the parking sign. Next slide, please. This is how the sign will be projecting in proximity to the existing post and stoplight. Next slide, please. This is looking south towards the site. So if you can see my mouse here, the sign will be, they're proposing to install the sign on this corner. Next slide, please. This is looking west towards the site. You can see the existing parking sign. Next slide, please. This is looking north towards the site. Next slide, please. This is looking north away from the site. Next slide, please. This is looking east away from the site. Next slide, please. This is looking south away from the site. Next slide, please. This is looking west away from the site. Next slide, please. And that concludes my photos, and with that, I will stand for questions.
Yes, Mr. Aldridge.
Yep, Christina, the existing blade sign that's there now, the parking sign, what is the difference between that or what the new proposed blade sign? Is that just a matter of approximately 2 foot lower? Is that the only variance on that?
It is lower, and it is projecting into the right-of-way.
Okay, but the existing parking sign is also in the right of way, correct?
Yes, but it is higher.
And just out of curiosity, you have a signalization pole. Does that extend over in the right of way too?
The stoplight pole here?
Yes.
I don't have the answer to the question, to that question. It does. Okay, it does.
Yeah, I'm thinking I don't see a difference or a problem just based on that alone. Just, just my opinion on that, so.
Does any other staff have an answer to that last question?
In terms of the last question on where the pole is for the signal?
Correct.
Yes, my understanding is it would be in the right of way because it better be, otherwise we've got challenges as a community, so yes, I would say yes, it's in the right of way.
Christina, is this the only business that's located here? I mean, is there a potential that if this sign was approved, that we would then need to follow other approvals for other businesses in this building?
I believe this is the only business, and it's on the first floor. The subsequent floors are apartment complexes.
So there's no possibility of other businesses being located on this first floor that would want to?
Not to my knowledge.
Commission have any other questions of staff? If not, thank you. We'll call on the agent or applicant. Please state your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals, my name is Greg Ferris. I reside at 144 South Bay Country Court here in Wichita. I'm representing Wichita Foundation. Also with me today is Jocelyn Hernandez. If you have any specific questions for the foundation itself, foundation obviously is its name, is working for the benefit and the good of Wichita. They're a non-for-profit. This is building is kind of a neat story. You know, most of us here are old enough to remember when that was a dumpy parking garage. They've gone in, remodeled it, made it look nice. And this sign, we believe, is a good, nice addition. Do I have control of the photos? I don't. Okay, that'll be good because I have no idea which one I want. If we could go to the slide of the sign itself, not the renderings, but where the sign is shown on the building. Could you find that slide for me? One of the things that I think is important in this request is that there are two variances. One is the setback variance, and one is the height from the bottom of the sign. Thank you very much, to the sidewalk. And staff can correct me because I asked her this question specifically. They believe that we meet the 5 criteria for the projection of the sign, but not the height of the sign above the right-of-way. And I think it's very clear that we do meet the 5 criteria for the projection, the taking of their right-of-way to widen Broadway, which was actually their property, is the reason why this sign projects into and over the sidewalk. One of the, I think, the kind of the nice things about downtown Wichita now, and you guys have been involved in some of those things, and some haven't, is these types of signs. I think they really look great and are dressing up our downtown and making it look more of an urban feel downtown. And I think that's a nice addition. So this sign is no exception to that, except for the fact that because they took Broadway, we need to be able to be into that right of way. If I could, let's see, yeah, I can. Right here, this little post that you see right here is the reason we need a height variance. And it's the only reason we need a height variance, because if we had applied for this as 2 signs and not had that supporting structure making it part of the sign that's above, we would not need a variance, because the sign code allows a sign of less than, I believe it's 2 square feet, to project into that 9-foot area. So we only need the variance for the height because of that little post right there. We're willing to take that post out and beef up the other post. So if the commission, the BZA feels like they need to approve this as only the extension variance, we can do that. I think that's short-sighted. I think it's, it could probably be sold as two signs if I applied for it properly, but, and this was just a mounting bracket. And so I believe that you could follow my criteria, and I believe it meets the criteria. One of the other issues they brought up is that we could do a wall sign. You all drive down Broadway, you all drive down the streets in Wichita, and when we get downtown, you have tall buildings. The reason that you don't have people coming in with lots of building signs is that you don't see those flat against with the other tall buildings as you're approaching. So people are not doing wall signs downtown unless there is some space between where people are driving. There's no point in putting up a sign if you're not going to see it. If it's flat against the wall, you're not going to see it because of the height of the buildings around it. So with that, I believe that, again, we meet the criteria, all 5 criteria. For clearly, we meet it for the setback, but because we really don't even need a variance for the height other than just making it a little more structurally sound, I think that you should approve the variances. I've requested it. If not, I would ask that you would at least approve the variance, and we will apply for this as 2 signs instead of 1. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions of the agent? Mr. Williams Bay.
Yes, Mr. Ferris, have you applied for this as 2 signs? Would that center section, that little post that you're talking about, be removed?
Yes, sir, would. And we would just, that other post that you see right here, we would just have to beef that up just a little bit for structural purposes. But again, when you're looking at this, you really don't see those posts. So for all intents and purposes, it looks like three different signs, even though it really, according to the code, is one sign.
Greg,
Yes.
I'd feel a lot better if you rotated that 180 degrees.
And did what? Oh, you know what? That does make sense. I'll mention that to the sign company, and Jocelyn, you may want to consider that. He's an architect. He has a good eye for that stuff. So, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it because I hadn't really, again, I don't have your eye. But you know what? That makes a lot of sense that Wichita should be going from bottom to up instead of otherwise. Excuse me?
Any other questions of the agent from the commission? Yes.
This is just more of a comment that as long as the sign meets the conditions, there's no variance for the projecting into the right of way. And based on the measurements that he's provided, there's not a request to have a variance to allow the sign to project into the right of way. The variance being considered today is for the clearance from the ground level to the bottom of the sign.
That's not what I asked the variance for. I mean, we need a variance for the clearance. That's what,
For the clearance from the height.
I'm not the clearance. We need a variance for projection. We must have that because it doesn't meet the criteria for the projection.
Assuming the variance to grant the clearance as asked, it would then meet the requirements. By the variance, it has to be 10 feet,
But,
correct?
but the setback variance,
There is no setback, it's projecting sign.
right, so I'm sorry, I said a setback. The amount of projection is required to be less than, and I'd have to look here, it cannot be, extend over the sidewalk. We're not allowed to do that
As long as
because,
you're 10 feet, you can.
excuse me,
As long as it's 10 feet in clearance,
but we
you
don't
can.
meet that 10 feet.
Correct, and that's what this variance will take care of.
Okay,
So I don't believe you need a separate variance to allow an extension that's already permitted. The sign's a projected sign, and that's part of the definition. It's by definition gonna go over the property line. As to the bottom sign can, that was discussed with the sign company. At length, this sign was discussed, and that bottom can projects more than the 2 feet it would be allowed to project. It could be 4 square feet, can't project more than 2, because that was an idea that was tossed around, was separating this into 2 separate signs, having the 2-piece larger top sign and then the small can, but it still projects too far, so that's why we're
the
here.
way that I read the code, and of course, JR, I don't want to argue with you about the code, but I thought it was that it had to be less than 2 square feet of signage.
I believe it's 4 square feet.
I mean,
not-
4 square feet, yes.
And not projecting more than 2 square feet. There's an and.
Well, you can't be and projecting 2 square feet because you don't project square feet,
2 lineal feet.
lineal feet. Okay, I stand corrected because that was not the information that was given to me by the sign company, and I apologize.
So the question I've got for somebody is if we wanted to approve it the way that the drawing is presented, what are we approving?
You would be, if you approve,
We approve that
If-
rendering right there.
if you approve this rendering right here, you are approving the variance to allow this size of sign to be less than 10 feet from the ground.
Are there any other questions of the agent?
If we do that, are we setting a precedence? Are there any signs, other signs downtown that's less than 10 feet?
I'll take a stab at that. My guess is that it's possible, with as much development over the period of time. I know in my tenure, we've gone by the code. We seem to be having a spate of projecting signs here recently. This is not the only one that we've dealt with. We didn't see them for quite some time. Of course, there's a lot of development going on in downtown right now. I'm sure if we did a survey in all the CBD, we probably would find some that are less. Can I pick one out and give it as an example? No.
This is nothing new.
It's a projecting sign, so no.
Any other questions of the agent?
I'll stand by if there are.
If not, you have 2 minutes if you'd like for rebuttal on what's been discussed. Or is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on this? If not,
Well, and I think JR has correctly identified that there are other signs, so you're not setting a precedent. I think that, again, if this was a sign that was obnoxiously large, if it was something that, you know, as you looked at it, you go, oh my gosh, that just really stands out and looks horrible projecting out there, and it's, I think you'd have maybe some argument, but with what we have designed here, and what small variants that we're asking for, I believe that this sign is an excellent representation of what we like our city to look like. And I think it clearly meets the 5 criteria for variance.
thank you. I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve with the requested variance, height variance.
We had a motion from Mr. Aldridge, a second from Mr. Joe Johnson. Excuse me.
Just a quick staff clarification. So as part of that, then it meets the 5 criteria, and then would you also apply the 2 conditions that are listed in the staff report?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Bill Johnson.
Is that motion to make Wichita turn that around?
I could say something.
Now you're getting into the weeds. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So now we will adjourn the BZA meeting and go back to the MAPC meeting. And by my records, we are going to discuss 2.2 sub 2023-00046.
Neil Stroh, planning staff, the hydraulic and 47th edition is a city plat. This encompasses 5 lots. The zoning is LC limited commercial. The plat also encompasses a vacation of an east-west right-of-way located right there. Next slide, please. The subdivision committee reviewed this last week, and at that meeting, City Public Works required the applicant to extend water along with sewer. And the drainage plan has been approved by city stormwater. Next slide, please. The new street names were also approved by GIS for the north-south streets. Access controls, the plat denoted 1 access opening along hydraulic and 2 street openings along the south along 47th Street. The traffic engineering required the approach along hydraulic to be full opening as long as it is moved further to the north away from the intersection. 47th Street, we needed access controls denoted with complete access controls along the areas outside of the street openings. And the right-of-way was approved, 60-foot right-of-way with a 10-foot dedication. The right-of-ways are existing, they're 67 feet, which the applicant chose to retain. That is substandard. Our subdivision regulations require a 70-foot wide right-of-way for commercial streets. and a waiver was recommended to be approved by the subdivision committee. Similarly, there is a portion of the pavement at the south portion of the site to serve the existing commercial site right here. And with the reduced right-of-way, that would also entail a reduced pavement width. And the applicant was allowed or recommended to be allowed a waiver for the paving of both of these streets to match the existing pavement width. Sidewalks also required along both commercial streets per the subdivision regulations. We informed the applicant that the pipeline easement could not be vacated with a plat. That would need to be released by the pipeline company. There were additional easements requested by Evergy, and I also received an email from the South Area Neighborhood Association. They're located north of Fernwood Street. They mentioned that they did not want any through streets connecting to Fernwood. They had concerns of increased traffic. They felt that westbound traffic along 47th, this would give them the opportunity to avoid the traffic light by cutting through this plat and extending onto Fernwood. They wanted to avoid that happening. Similarly, any southbound traffic on Hydraulic could avoid the intersection by cutting through this plat and then going eastbound on 47th. Any questions for staff?
Are there any questions from the state? Yes, Mr. Bill Johnson.
Them connections to the street to the north, that's part of the subdivision regulations, as well as the fire department requiring that?
Yes, fire department is okay with this. The subdivision regulations require the continuation of any existing streets into the plat, so this does conform with the subdivision regulations.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, at this point, we'll ask the agent or applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Kirk Miller, K. Miller Engineering, 117 East Lewis. I'm the agent, and we're fine with the staff comments. The subdivision regulations require that the street be extended down to the south. One of the requirements in the staff comments is some traffic calming measures on Minnesota Street. And if you look at the plat to the north, it only has one access point right now, so it's a safety issue as to why a street needs to extend to the south.
Any questions from the commission for the agent? Any questions? Is there anybody from the public that has any questions of the agent? If so, please state your, I think at this point you should come to the podium and state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Richard Ruth, 3907 East Winston Street. I was going to just ask a question of why this would be considered a safety to have it go through. I know that there has been talk, or the requirement is, do you have one way, 2 ways in, 2 ways out? And there's been discussion about having a fire road as being an option for that it could be used. So I'm just wondering, the concern here is people taking shortcuts and exiting into their neighborhood and causing an increase in traffic. And so I just wanted to know why this is a fixed plan and not, in your thinking, able to be altered.
Does anyone else from the public want to speak on this? If not, we'll bring it back to the agent or applicant, and you will have 2 minutes rebuttal.
Right now, the interest in this project is this area down here in the southwest corner of the property. You know, the whole thing is zone commercial right now, LC. And that's why, you know, the whole thing's not platted, so we're platting it so that we have that platted so it's ready to develop. The rest of this area over here could very well go residential, and if that's the case, you've got lots fronting both those streets, and you'd want those drives to go through for access for the rest of the neighborhood. It'd basically be an extension of that neighborhood to the south. So that's the reason we want those roads to stay right now. If this were to become more of a commercial use later, then we may figure out some way to vacate some streets or something if that better fits what we need to do with it.
Mr. Blick.
So with having the streets offset, if somebody's gonna look down and look at trying to cut it through or whatever, dodge a light, they're gonna look down and see a dead end. So I would almost think that would be kind of more of a deterrent than if they go down and cut across, because they can do that pretty much anywhere in any street, just go down and cut across a neighborhood. But having that offset, that might kind of limit the calming side of it.
And the traffic calming measures of speed bumps or whatever through there would also help.
Okay, thank you. We'll bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we support the subdivision's recommendations.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Aldrich and second by Mr. Blick.
Can I have a clarification on what that motion actually meant? What subdivision recommendations are you talking about?
Subdivision recommended approval, and I'm suggesting that we do the same thing, recommend approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now we are moving on to item 4.1, which is being sent back to us from the county commission for discussion, and we'll call on staff for a presentation.
Yes, good afternoon. Philip Zievenbergen with planning staff. Zone 2023-20 is a request to rezone a property from single-family SF20 to GC General Commercial. It is in unincorporated Sedgwick County. It's on the west side of North Ridge Road, just south of West 45th Street North, as you can see on your screen. As the chair mentioned, it was sent back to us by the Board of County Commissioners. It was originally heard by the Planning Commission on May 25th, 2023. The original conversation about this case at the MAPC, the request was for a vehicle storage yard. The MAPC considered the request, recommended approval of the request subject to protective overlay number 412, which is listed in your staff report. On July 19th of 2023, the Board of County Commissioners considered the zone change request. They held a public hearing, and several members of the public spoke in opposition at this hearing, citing concerns of negative impacts to the residential properties surrounding it, possible noise, odor, possible decrease in property values. The minutes of that meeting was attached in your packet, if you haven't perused those already. The discussion at the BOCC, per the public comment, spurred a discussion as to whether or not the use classification of vehicle storage yard was the most appropriate use classification given the stated nature of the operation of this site. And so the Board of County Commissioners sent it back to Planning Commission for further consideration with a specific action and task of clarifying the use classification that the applicant is asking for. Staff talked with the applicant and got a detailed description of their operation on the site that was also included in your staff report, and came to the following conclusions. Number one, that the use on the site is a legal rural home occupation under Section 4E8 of the Unified Zoning Code, which permits the parking or storage of one commercial vehicle exceeding 26,000 pounds of gross vehicle weight rating. And there is no limit to the number of vehicles permitted on the property that is under the 26,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating designation. Number two, that the current operation is not in compliance with the home occupation section of the zoning code because they are storing or parking more than one commercial vehicle that exceeds the 26,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. And the third one is that the zone change in general commercial is an appropriate avenue by which to bring it into compliance, but under a different use category of commercial parking area. Commercial parking area is defined as an area or structure used to intend to be used for off-street parking of operable motor vehicles on a temporary basis, other than as accessory parking to a principal non-residential use. This also includes the ability to park commercial vehicles. The original recommendation from staff that was supported by MAPC was with protective overlay number 412. Staff recommended this protective overlay to the site based on the site's proximity to nearby residences and its location within the floodplain that limited the use of the site. Staff is recommending approval of the request with the alternative or updated use classification and modified language to the protective overlay that is identified in red in your staff report under the recommendation section. The vehicle, and the reason there's for the discussion is it's based off of a nuance between the definition of storage versus parking. Storage, per the definition in the zoning code, implies that a vehicle is stationary, like it's moved on there and it stays put for at least 72 hours or more. Based on the description from the applicant of how they use the property, they are parking the vehicles overnight, but daily they are bringing them out to do business and then bringing them back and parking them overnight. And they may come on and off the property multiple times a day if they need to trade out a truck because one's malfunctioning, or if a driver comes back and takes a lunch on the property. And so vehicle or commercial parking area is more appropriate because they are not stationary for more than 72 hours necessarily. And so GC is still an appropriate designation. The original request was for GC without stipulations for vehicle storage yards, so it was advertised appropriately. Screening is still required. That was all the same from the original staff report. And so I will focus my attention on the modified protective overlay language. So again, staff is recommending approval subject to the modified protective overlay language. Essentially, we're switching out where it said vehicle storage yard and including commercial parking area instead. So item number one, that the uses be limited to those allowed in SF20 except for commercial parking area as allowed in general commercial. Item number two is actually a new condition of the protective overlay. The commercial parking area be accessory to one residential dwelling on site. If no residential use is on site, an amendment to the protective overlay is required to permit a commercial use. Essentially saying they can't not use the property residentially. They can't demolish the building and then just have a commercial parking lot. If there's no residential dwelling on site, then they can't have a commercial operation on site. Item number 4 was modified to say parked commercial vehicles versus stored commercial vehicles need to be screened and be hid from ground level view and adjacent properties and rights of way. Item 5 was modified to say all parking of commercial vehicles versus the storage. Item 6 was modified again to change out vehicle storage yard to commercial parking area, and the parking area and driveways shall be paved with an all-weather surface. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Aldridge.
Yeah, I still have some concerns like I did the last time we heard this. This board approved a similar thing, request over at 5206 North Ridge, and that wound up just being horrible over there. They had wrecked vehicles over there. There's no way that they were operable or was going to run, and it looked like it was just turning into a salvage yard. I took photos and sent them over to the planning director, and a short period of time got that cleaned up. my understanding that the same person that owns this site also owns that site. And when you look at the transition that we're starting to see from 96 to 53rd Street, those are, still predominantly residential housings and properties. And I just think that it may look like on paper, if you will, that it's going to be acceptable for the growth plan over, but I think what it's doing is destroying the residential over there. And I just don't think we need to be going down that path, in that area. And making the modifications, changing it from storage to parking, I don't think that's going to matter a whole lot what they do over there. And I think that, you're gonna have compliance issues. I think you're just opening up that door.
Yeah, Mr. Blick.
I have a question for JR. So when you go out, if someone goes to report something and they have a fence and gate and everything, and you see a vehicle that's back there and it's parked, and if they say it's been out there for weeks and you go out there, how do you actually get out there to mark to see if that vehicle if it's gated? I know with PD, they'll mark it and they'll put a piece of chalk and stuff. Do you have to use photos, look over a fence, since you can't actually get inside that property?
That's a good question. The answer would be, that's exactly what you'd have to do. You do the best that you could, and in some cases, you simply can't prove. And the zoning code is a criminal code, charges are criminal violations, so the burden of proof is on us, the government, and it's a criminal burden of proof. So you try to find creative ways sometimes, but yeah, as far as just walking up into a gated property and marking the vehicle, that's probably not likely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments from the commission to staff at this point? If not, is there anyone from the public here that would like to speak on this item? Applicant, I'm sorry, yes. Get the applicant and agent. You have 10 minutes, and please state your name and address.
Good afternoon, Brian Kuhn, 310 West Central Suite 203. I'm the agent for the applicant. What staff has done here today, they've really dialed in the protective overlay to make this as restrictive as it can be without while still allowing the operational use. So staff has put in a lot of effort to make sure that this is dialed down. The noise is addressed in the protective overlay. Almost everything is addressed in the protective overlay. There will be an enforcement, and if there are any issues, the enforcement is there, and the enforcement would be better in the future with this protective overlay than it would be now. So I would ask the committee to recognize that the diligence of the staff and how good this protective overlay is written. And I'd also, go ahead.
My name's Andy Main, 4435 North Ridge. Just going through these things, I'm the son-in-law of the owner. I can speak to multiple different areas of this, but we are there to run a trucking business. We're there to park our trucks, the 5 to 7 trucks, on the paved area, just as it's laid out here. We're here to do it by the rules, and that's what we're here for. So any questions or anything like that, I'd like to field those at any point.
I got a question.
Mr.
How do you prevent, like for the stormwater runoff, if you're gonna be parking, it looks like most of it's gonna be running from north to south in that area, and it looks like there is a pond that's to the south property line. How do you, I know with trucks and everything, sometimes you get leaks and all that stuff, and it gets down into the ground and you have runoff. How do you prevent from contaminating that possible pond that's just south of there?
I think on that one, that's the same idea. We moved the parking to the north side of the property. There's a picture somewhere, but if you see on this one, you can see we moved the parking from here farther out away, and it'll still be on that all-weather paved surface, the 10,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Zimmelman.
Approximately how many times during the day does one of your trucks come in and leave and come back?
As a driver, most of the time I leave in the morning and I don't come back. Breaks happen across town or this, that. I go to the restroom at Quick Trip. But there are times where I have a load early in the morning. I come back for a 30-minute break. I go out for another load after that, and I may come back. So I might come back 2 times a day, generally at the most, but that doesn't bar a mechanical breakdown or something like that that would bring me in to switch trucks or
And
the
you're
like.
one of how many trucks?
I am one of 4. We had 5, now we're down to 4, but in our business plan, it's 5 to 7.
So the other 4 are coming and going also?
We generally don't run all 4 every day, but yes, on a particular day, if 4 trucks are running, we're probably not coming back for breaks. That's 1 truck runs generally every day, 2 trucks run when you keeping the bills paid, and then any more than that, and we're staying busy. So we're not coming back if all 4 trucks are running, barring a mechanical breakdown.
Mr. Blick.
Question, since you're a trucker, I've always wondered this question. A lot of times, semi-truck drivers leave their trucks running all the time, and especially being on the country. I mean, you hear a gunshot and it goes for 3 miles. So with it running a diesel and stuff, what's your typical startup running in the morning, and how long in the afternoon, or you just shut it off right away? How's that usually work?
So obviously, when it's cold, we'll have them plugged in. They start a little quicker. They're already a little more warmed up, but generally around 10 to 15 minutes. Shutdown time is no more than 5 minutes. You don't want to waste the fuel.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? If not, is there anyone from the public that wants to speak on this? Yeah, please come forward. You will have 3 minutes and state your name and address.
I'm Jim Nichols at 4425 North Ridge Road. Thank you for letting me speak. I live right next door to the south of this property. I've been there 41 years. And our first letter we got was May 25th. Like Philip said, it was rezoning for storage yard. And when we went to the county commissioners, the homeowners described it, what was really going on, so they sent it back to this body because they bring in dirt, rock, and sand, and they come in and out of there all day long. And second letter was August 14th. And Philip, we all got a letter. The more appropriate was after the county commissioners denied it, the more appropriate use was construction sales, service, outdoor storage, commercial parking, and the applicant delayed this. August 2nd, we got another letter. He changed the wording. Application is now commercial parking. To me, commercial yard and commercial parking is the same. It's 2 different words, but it means the same thing. We had 9 homeowners around the whole property sign petitions. There's 7 vehicles over 26,000 pounds. He's got 2 skid loaders. And that guy just previously said they just let them idle. We'll start them things up in the morning, and they'll sometimes run for an hour and a half idling. Right my barn, and I get nothing but diesel fumes. Yesterday, he had the air impact wrenches going full blast, and the neighbors can hear them down the way a quarter of a mile. He washes his trucks with high-pressure hose, and he works 7 days a week. He'll work Sunday morning, Saturday night, whenever he has a job, he'll go out. It don't matter what time of day it is. And our property values, we're all concerned that it's going to affect our property value by at least 1/3 of our value with this trucking business. And he's since put up he went and put up a used metal fence that's got different sizes of post, and it's got different colors of it. It reminds me of what used to be on Hoover Road around them salvage yards. And you can see it from 45th Street. It just sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's right against my property. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this case? Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, and please confine your comments to anything that hasn't been discussed.
Okay. My name's Tony Laux, 4400 North Ridge Road. My first concern is the groundwater contamination. We don't have city water, we're on well water. And I don't care how careful you are, if you're working on a truck, you're contaminating the ground. It's going in there. You're power washing all the grease and oil and diesel fuel and everything else off those, and it's going right into our drinking water. And the noise was out, it was ridiculous yesterday. I could hear it clear down the street. I don't know what they were doing. They were banging, grinding, air ratchet, impact, whatever. That's not storage, that's not parking, that's working on them. That's not what it's there for. And I am too concerned about my property value. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the public like to speak on this? Please approach the podium, give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Afternoon. My name is James Thompson. I live at 4419 North Ridge Road. I'm here with my wife, Vonda, the two of us. I'd like to step over here and point some things out.
Sir, can you use the mouse on the computer screen there?
Yeah. This is our house right here. A few years ago, we just put in brand new driveways, new sidewalks in the front, and a brand new patio in the back. And one of the favorite part of our day is to go out on that patio in the morning when the weather is nice and drink our coffee and listen to the birds and just enjoy the weather and that type of thing. And his maintenance yard is right here, and I know he's not calling it that, but that's exactly what it is. He's got these big trucks that are the size of semis, only they're the big dump trucks. And he fires them up in the morning. 2 days ago, just now, he said that he fires them up for 5 minutes. Well, 2 days ago, I was out in the backyard doing things in my yard, and I timed those trucks running for 45 minutes. And I talked to one of the neighbors and told him, well, he's running those trucks all morning out there. And she said, well, it ran a lot more than 45 minutes. That truck was running closer to an hour and a half. And they're living just to the south there also. So there's really more going on that lot than what people they're saying. And then when they're out there power washing those trucks off with those high pressure hoses, all that grease and oil and everything is coming off of those trucks and it's going right into our groundwater or drinking water. So, am I out of through? Oh, and then out here, they haul in loads of dirt and stone, and then they use those bobcats separating everything out. So they're unloading out of one truck and loading it back into that truck, or separating materials and everything out there too. So it's more like a construction site than it is a storage yard. Any questions?
Thank you for your comments, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this case? Please come forward and state your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes, and please confine your comments to new items.
Thank you. Janice Nichols at 4425 North Ridge Road. And I just want to say that there's, pull the mic down. Won't come down. Okay. We already know it's a big trucking company. It's not just a residential, and it's right in the middle of all our residences. And there was 9 protesters, 9 property owner protesters at the BOCC meeting. And we all disapprove of this trucking company. And I want you to know that I have found out the residences around, all of them around this residence have lived there many, many years. It's not just like, they've been there 6 years, I believe. We've been there 41 years. The neighbors have been there 37 years, just south of us. The neighbors across the street from this family have been there 59 years, and that lady's 97 years old and still living. The Tony's been there 30 years. The people 2 houses south have been there 55 years. There's people on 45th, been there 36 years. The lady just north of them has been there 35 years. And another family on Ridge Road, or on 45th, and their property backs up to the property we're talking about, have been there 47 years. So I just want you all to think about that. These are all people that we've all had our residences out there for a long, long time, and we don't need a business right square in the middle of them. And Tony also wanted me to say that he's been logging in and out trucks, in and out, if anybody wants to see a log for the last month. And we know how many times they go in and out of there every day. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this case? Okay, sir, if you'd like to approach the podium, give us your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Dan Johnson, 7777 West 45th Street North. We own the 40 acres that are behind all of their properties. And the main thing I want to say is that the representation that you have up here of their property is inaccurate. I have a picture on my tablet that I don't know if I can project it to the screen or not, or pass this around. It is a much better representation of what it looks like on that property. This looks fairly clean and fairly nice. That's not what it looks like if you look at the Google image right now. And this was taken in 2023. Any questions?
Mr. Blick.
Is that a creek that runs right down into the middle of your
Yes,
property?
that's on our property.
What is that creek called?
The slough.
The slough, and is it drain north to south?
Yes. North to south.
Thank you.
I only have 23 years there. Shirley has 60 years on the property, so a little more experience than I do.
Any other questions of the speaker? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this case? Anyone else? If not, we'll bring it back to the agent or applicant, and you will have 2 minutes rebuttal.
As we see development change, I remember Mays Road and how it was vacant for so long, and then you would see development along Mays Road and how the character of that changed with time. And that took place over, I remember being young, and such a long void between Wichita and Mays. What we're seeing is development now. And we're seeing that essential part of what keeps a city alive is economic development. And I'd like to ask closing comments.
Just in some of the things that I've seen down there, I know Central Sand, one of the really big commercial places where we get all our sand, where we run everything, is looking to move down on Ridge. I know that'll increase traffic on Ridge even more. to the uneven posts on the fence. We just haven't got to trimming them down. It's 500 plus feet of fence, and we ran that before the approval. And with, full plans to run the rest. What else was there?
Your screening.
Oh, the screening on the front, the back, all the way around. I mean, that will be there. We got the one on the front. We took care of that. Really, I mean, and the noise, just moving our trucks from one spot to another. Yeah, there's some noise of an impact wrench taking off a lug nut. There are more than a few lug nuts on there, so if you're doing a brake job, it might take a little bit of noise. But anything that would be all of that would be following the protective overlay 412. With the screening up, we should also reduce any additional noise on top of that.
Thank you for your comments. I'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Mr. Aldrich?
Yes, sir. So you're not just doing parking over there, you're actually doing maintenance and repairs. Is that correct?
Anything light maintenance or stuff like that. Brakes would be light maintenance, changing a tire. Once you get into the engine or anything like that, we'd outsource that fleet pride.
Okay, and as far as economic development, there's a big difference between enhancing and growing and tearing down. And I just think that the area over there it's destroying that residential neighborhood over there.
Do we have any other discussion from the commission? Yes, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I heard a comment about construction materials being stored on site and you changing that out. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. In the past, we have had dirt there, multiple different types of dirt. We applied for a permit a few years ago to bring the ground up to raise it out of the floodplain. And that's what most of that is. The rock we do have there to spread out. We have to spread it out every single month to underneath the trucks just to keep everything level. So a load of rock does come in, and a load of rock does get moved around with the Bobcat, but we're not a transfer station.
Any more discussion from the commission? Yes, Ms. Fox.
The current Google Earth map shows large piles of tires. Do you have a tire operation there also?
No, with as many tires as there are on the truck, when you do a brake job, we'll pull them off. We save up one truckload worth and then take them. So they'll be anywhere from 12 to 18, roughly, pending the rims.
Any other questions from the council? If not, let's entertain a motion for this.
Not a staff question?
Yes.
Not a staff question. If we were to turn this down, would that preclude the owner from working on his trucks on his own property? If we were to turn down this request, would that preclude the owners from working on their own trucks on their own property?
I don't think so. Their own personal vehicles, I don't think so.
But that'd be, private vehicles, not commercial vehicles, correct?
I'd say yes, it would naturally follow without the commercial activity being permitted.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission? Do we have a motion on this application?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion of denial. I just don't think that this site and what the applicant has been doing, and will be doing is compatible with the surrounding residential neighbors. I think there's major concerns that I have regarding compliance it controls. We're looking at live Google, and it's totally different than what it's being shown up here. I get concerned about the groundwater contamination. We got the golden rules that we've got to go by, and I think this is not a good situation for all the surrounding residents in that area right now. So I would like to make a motion to deny.
I'd second that motion. I'd agree with it.
We've had a motion by Mr. Aldrich and a second by Mr. Blick. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Three.
If we could, who are the three? Warren, Bill Johnson, and Williams Bay. Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. The case is denied. Now we'll move on to case number 00054.
Good afternoon again, Philip Zievenbergen with planning staff. Con 2354 is request for a 195-foot cell tower on property zoned rural residential, generally located west of 167th Street North and about a quarter mile south of West 53rd Street North. This is also in the Colwich area of influence. The blue line you see on the map are the city limits of Colwich. The lease area for the tower is approximately 300 feet or so from the city limits of Colwich. The applicant and agent, rather, the agent being the cell tower leasing the property from the property owner, would be leasing a 100-foot by 100-foot section of land in order to construct the tower. Just give us a minute here. All right, let's proceed. So they'll be leasing a 100-foot by 100-foot section of land in order to construct the proposed tower. That is a 10,000 square foot area. The parent parcel is approximately 36.5 acres. Apologize again. The standards of the zoning code would allow a tower of up to 120 feet to be approved by administrative permit as long as it complies with the compatibility height standards. The request for this tower exceeds that by 75 feet. The compatibility standards for height for a cell tower is a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have a 195-foot tower, you need to be 195 feet away from your nearest property line. This complies with that standard as this is the nearest property line and is well over 195 feet away from that. The nearest property line is about 300 feet. This strip of property is under the same ownership as the applicant, and it's about 60 feet wide or so before you get to the residential development in Colwich. If you want to go to the site plan, Paul, the cell tower would be accessed by a 30-foot easement, which would have a 12-foot gravel drive. This is kind of hard to see here, but there's a gravel drive that is kind of a U shape through the parent parcel here, and then there would be an extension of that existing drive to the cell tower location. The tower is proposed to be a monopole structure and enclosed by a 6-foot solid screening fence, which does meet the screening standards of the Unified Zoning Code. As a reminder, the state of Kansas has a state statute, KSA 66-2019, that specifies 18 prohibitions when it comes to looking into the placement of wireless communication facilities. That entire list is located in your staff report for consideration. There's a discussion of 5 prominent ones in the body of the staff report as well. Particularly, these talk about not imposing very strict disguises on them. We can't tell them that their tower can be put in a different location or how tall their tower can be in order to meet their needs. We can't, if the FCC says the radio frequencies meet certain standards, we can't question those, but there's a discussion in those, and I know this is not our first cell tower case, but if you have any questions of those, I'd be happy to help answer them, or we have legal consideration here as well. Property to the north, as I mentioned before, is under the same ownership and is zoned rural residential. It's a narrow parcel and is a part of the larger farming operation. North of that parcel is R1 zoning in the city of Colwich and developed with single-family homes. The proposed tower would be approximately 450 feet from the tower to the nearest house to the north. Property to the east, on the east side of 167th Street, is zoned R1 in the city of Colwich as well. It is currently an agricultural field. Property to the west and south are zoned RR and are agricultural fields as well. On October 24th, the City of Colwich Planning Commission considered this item. There's a number of residents who came out in opposition to the request. The action at that meeting was to table the vote until October 31st. They called a special meeting in order to give additional time for consideration. They chose to close the public hearing at the October 24th meeting and did not take any additional comments on the October 31st meeting. On October 21st, the action of the Colwich Planning Commission was to recommend denial of the application, citing findings that it was not in conformance with the Colwich future land use map or the Wichita-Sedgwick County Wireless Communications Master Plan, and could have detrimental impacts and possible impacts on value of nearby residential properties, as well as the public opposition. The conformance to policies and plans, we talked about it's in the Colwich area of influence. Paul, do we have the Colwich map available, please? The future growth map of the Colwich plan identifies this as appropriate for the continuation of single-family residential. Sorry, I apologize, we don't have it on the screen, but you have it in your staff report. But it extends the similar low-density residential that is currently developed north of it if this property were to ever be redeveloped in the future. The Wireless Communication Master Plan states that in general, tall towers and facilities should be located heavily in commercial and industrial areas and should decrease in height as intensity of development decreases, with the shortest facilities being located in residential areas. Additionally, facilities should be located and designed in a manner to minimize visual obtrusiveness and negative aesthetic impacts on surrounding properties. The subject for the 195-foot pole is an agricultural field right now, but it's in close proximity to low-density residential. In addition, based on the projection of possible development in the Colwich future plan showing low-density residential, staff has identified this as being an inappropriate height for the tower and considering it a tall tower in a residential area, which does not conform to the Wireless Communications Master Plan. There is a established mature tree row of deciduous trees on this property line. It's not the north property line of the parcel, but effectively it kind of is. So it provides additional visual buffering in addition to the 6-foot screening fence that would be there. Given the proximity to that, obviously the tower would project higher than those trees would be, and they are deciduous, so right about now they're losing their leaves. So there would be differences in visual impacts depending on the time of year when the trees have their foliage. Overall, staff is recommending denial based on the factors in your staff report. Overall, staff's opinion is that would have negative detrimental impacts to the low residential areas, which is not in conformance with the adopted plans and policies and is not in character with the neighborhood. I just want to mention under finding number 3, it says proposed site is large enough to accommodate the 195-foot tower and be in compliance with the high compatibility standards. However, alternate locations in the area or a shorter tower may be less visually obtrusive to the dwelling. I say this in essentially to say, not to say that we can consider those things. We can't, under the KSA statute, we cannot tell them to put their tower in a different location or to have a shorter tower. We have to take this one on face value. It was just as comparison of would be considered a tall tower and have detrimental impacts. Possible other locations, if there would be a different application for a different location or a different tower, potentially could have less visual impacts on the nearby residential. Should the MAPC recommend approval, there are standard conditions in your staff report, and for the sake of time, I'm not necessarily going to go over them. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you. Again, they're the standard ones. We don't necessarily have any special condition on this one, should the MAPC recommend approval of it. At your tables, there are a packet of information. The very first one is emails that I've received from neighbors since the staff report was mailed to you guys. The next two stapled items are from the agent who is here today. He provided some information this morning that he wanted to pass along to you regarding this location. So the first stapled thing that's listed as Con 2354 public comments is from neighbors. The next two stapled packets are from the agent who wanted to provide you all with some additional information that I'm sure he may reference in his time here after me. Let's go through some site photos. Again, this is the aerial. Next picture, please. This is the future growth map for our comprehensive plan, identifying it in Colwich's urban growth area. Next picture. This is the site plan. This is the tower compound. These are outbuildings on the property right now. Next picture. This is an elevation rendering of the proposed monopole. Next picture. This is looking north. This area right in here is where the proposed tower compound would be. Next picture. This is looking west. This is looking north. That's the mature tree line on the north property line of the adjacent parcel. But as you can see, it is essentially just a tax parcel, but under the same ownership, but there's no distinction between the parent parcel and the parcel to the north. On the other side of these trees are those residential houses. Next picture. And I guess I'll stand for questions.
Do you have any questions of staff? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Philip, the vote from the Colwich Planning Commission and some of the letters you've gotten, was that specifically the height was the issue, the 195 foot, or were they just opposed to cell towers in general?
My understanding of the vote was based on the height and the possible visual impacts in the close proximity to the residential dwellings that are on the south side, and the possible impacts and to future development in the area with the presence of the tower. I don't think it was opposed to cell towers in general. There were some public comments regarding some of the possible safety concerns we've heard with other cell tower cases that aren't available for us to consider based on the state statute. So there were some concerns of the proximity based on the perceived health concerns of cell tower activity. But in general, I don't think it was opposed to cell towers in general. I think it was based on the height and the visual impacts and possible impacts to properties.
And my next question is, have we had experience with development coming into an area where a cell tower already exists? And does that limit how close a plat would put lots next to an existing? I mean, right now, we try not to put a tower next to a house. Can the opposite happen?
Yes, the opposite absolutely could happen. This does not prevent future development from happening in the area. Again, if essentially in case law in Kansas, or just in planning in general, if you essentially come to a nuisance, you can't complain about it.
So it'd basically be up to homeowners. If they don't want to live next to a tower, they would have the right not to buy.
Correct. If the tower were to be approved and constructed, and then the land come available for development in the future, it would not prevent this land from being redeveloped. It might make it tricky based on where the floodplain is to the west and the available land for development, but that's not necessarily under consideration today of how the possible future redevelopment.
Mr. Blick.
I have a question for council. We normally cannot talk about the health benefits and stuff about it, But it's interesting, in our packet, we received information about the health benefits of a cell phone tower and about cancer and what's worse, police and mobile radio versus a cell phone site. So is that a miss?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. I believe that was part of the packet provided by the outside neighbors or public. And so, I mean, that was submitted for your consideration by neighbors or interested parties. We're not necessarily supposed to filter it in that way and not let you see it, but what I am saying to you today is, per the statutes, that type of health impact should not be considered.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Mr. Aldridge.
The height of the tower is 195 foot. From the proposed site to the tree row to the north, would that be approximately 300 foot?
300, 350.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williams Bay.
Yeah, Philip, how will that site be accessed? Is that a road leading back to the proposed site?
There will be, if it's approved, there's a gravel drive on the property right now that's this U shape right here. If approved, they would extend a gravel drive in this location here. This is the property's lagoon. And they have the, when I went out to go to the site pictures, I was able to drive my car over this, but they would make it a gravel access drive to the tower compound from the existing driveway on the site.
Any other comments of staff or questions for staff? Thank you, Philip. Now we will call on the agent or applicant. Please state your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor McAllister, and I'm here on behalf of Vertical Bridge, who's looking to build this tower. And I live at 16020 Sterling Canyon. And I do want to go ahead and do a couple of quick housekeeping things real quick. And like Philip mentioned, I did email in some information to him this morning. I was thinking that we'd be able to throw it on screen, but sir, if you were referencing this packet right here, this is what's provided by me. This came from the wireless carrier to, provide additional information. And again, like I said, like council has mentioned, there are certain things that we cannot discuss. So a couple of things I do want to talk about real quick that was very, basically during our meeting with the town of Colwich, there were some questions that came up. A couple of them, I do want to go ahead and, like I said, housekeeping situations. They asked, where are the existing carrier towers? What I did is I went into the FCC, and if you look at this right here, again, unfortunately, we can't throw it up on screen. What I have right here is I showed you within the town of Colwich. Very good. Okay. Let's see if I can see that. We have.
You use the mouse, please, to
Yes.
point those out.
Yeah, if I can get to it right there, if I can see that. We have the town of Colwich is approximately right here. Within this first ring, which is approximately a mile, there are no cell towers. There's no licensed cell towers. It was questioned on whether there was equipment on top of the co-op, which is north of town. And based on, from what I could tell, that is not a wireless licensed equipment. So we have nothing we can do about that. The other thing is you see these right here, just outside of the town of Colwich. Okay. And what we're looking at right there are licensed broadcast towers. And in the picture that I sent to you, this is across the street. And what I'm pointing out here is a water tank and 3 500 probably foot guide towers. And this open vacant land, this is where supposedly it's pending development for home improvement. Is there, I don't know how to see here, and that would be basically right across the street, less than a half a mile. So the question that came up earlier is, obviously if you develop out the homes, well, they're going to be looking at these big broadcast towers already. Yes? So that's one thing. Okay. Like I said, in regards to our location, and as staff, thank you, Philip, for presenting an excellent job, is, let's see here. Floodway. By chance, let's see here if we can go back to the flood zone. I did also include a little overlay of that as well in my package. Let me see here. So the question comes up real quick, and I know I'm looking at my time, but the land that is developable on this farm, which is what it's being used, that it can be used for, right, is roughly 6 to 8 acres. All of the property owned by this entity, like I said, by this trust, the 37 plus for this parent tract that the tower falls in, they also own a lot more property that's all in the Cowskin watershed. It's all in floodway, and that'll be developed for houses. The closest thing that's going to be developed for houses is across the street right here. And they're going to be looking at broadcast towers. Based on where we positioned this pole with direction of the property owner away from the street, back off the street, south, roughly 450 foot more or less from the property line to the north, the houses to the north, we're well over the 1-to-1 ratio, nearly, half or more. So we've done everything we can. Back to this right here. T-Mobile is right here, T-Mobile is right here, and T-Mobile is right here. The town of Colwich is right here. You can see how close these are. Down here, we got a Verizon tower. Up here, we got a Verizon tower. Again, no cellular within a mile of the town of Colwich. We want to provide coverage into the town of Colwich. By asking for this height of a tower, it will allow connectivity in the area. Okay, it will allow for coverage. That's all we're asking for, to provide coverage into the town of Colwich. We are outside of the town. We understand we're in the area of influence, but we are in an area that's not developable. These people are not going to sell this farm. So, with that being said, I appreciate your time, and I know this is very, one of those situations that we do the best we can. We've actually reduced the height of the tower down to the 195. We've got FAA approvals, so we're good from that standpoint. This will help provide coverage in the area. If we have to reduce it down again, we will probably be back here in a year looking for another 1 or 2 more spots. We're trying to minimize the penetrations of the towers in the area. Okay. Any questions?
Yes. Are you saying you need a 195-foot tower to cover 1 mile area?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor, and I apologize. I'm just going to jump in here real quick, and I've got multiple items I want to discuss. First, going back to the health standards, I would refer to the statute that Philip referenced previously, KSA 662019F, in relation to health considerations. In section F13, it says we're not to impose any compliance measurements for radio frequency emissions or exposure from wireless facilities that exceed the requirements of the Federal Communications Commission rules for radio frequency. And then on section 14, it says in conformance with 47 USC 332C7B4, reject an application in whole or in part based on perceived or alleged environmental effects of radio frequency emissions or exposure. So that's the exact language, Commissioner Blick, in reference to your comments. And then going back to you, Commissioner Johnson, in part, I'm commenting on comments made by the applicant and starting to head off your question here a little bit. It says that to ensure uniformity across the state with respect to consideration of every application, an authority shall not require an applicant to submit information about or evaluate an applicant's business decisions with respect to the applicant's design service, customer demand for service, or quality of the applicant's service to or from a particular site, area or site. So that's in relevant part from section F1. And I think that kind of is touching upon this whole discussion upon service to Colwich and the need for that and things of that nature. So I just wanted to bring that limitation to light within the statute.
Is there any more discussion from the commission or questions of the applicant at this point? Not, thank you for your comments. Now we'll call on anybody from the public that has anything to say on this case. Is there anybody present from the public that would like to speak? If so, please come forward and you will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Scott Regatz. I reside at 415 Homestead Court in Colwich. Our property is it's a little over 400 feet directly north of the proposed tower site. I'd just like to make a couple points here, is that residents in our area, we don't have any cell phone issues. So I'm not sure for the burning desire to develop one in a residential neighborhood. We are concerned about our property values. We have a direct line of sight through the trees. The staff photo doesn't adequately depict what we see from approximately 2 of the 4 cul-de-sacs that'll be impacted by the height of this tower. And ironically, 2 weeks after we had the staff presentation in Colwich, there was a fire at the T-Mobile site, which is an identical tower that's proposed in this. And those of you that might have seen those pictures, there was fire burning from the top of the tower and the base of the tower, and that tower is actually located, I believe, in a public park. But this is really close to the house. We have some concerns on information that we've researched that it could reduce our property values up to 9 to 20%. And given the view and the impact from the rear of our house, we believe it would be on the higher end. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this issue? If so, please come forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
And Kirk Sponsor, Deputy County Councilor, just so I'm unbiased and presenting everything to the commission, I would also reiterate my prior comments for the previous speaker in which they questioned the need for a cell tower in providing coverage. I would just reiterate my prior discussions about KSA 66-2019 F1 and the limitations on considering the customer demand for service, things of that nature.
Thank you. Scott Carter, 419 Homestead Court. Right here. We just purchased our house in January, moved in. Love the location, love the neighborhood and everything. I do want to comment, there were a lot of questions raised about the discussion at the meeting, the conclusion of the Colwich Committee. And yes, it's true that a lot of these things were discussed that maybe we cannot officially comment on or make the conclusion on. But I don't think that precludes what the county commission or the county planning committee department has recommended, is that it does impact the visual and potentially the property value of where we live. And I think it's interesting to note, this is not just for the houses directly along the tree line, but when you're turning down the court here, coming into the house, going to our houses where everyone plays, people are outside all the time. It will be a very large impact there.
The comment was made that there's towers across the street to the east. That's true. They're a couple miles away. They are very tall. Yes, we can see them. That does not mean that I want to see more out of my windows in our backyard and our front yard. So I just want to say, I think, the burden of proof to exceed the limits of what the zoning commission has in place already, that's there for a reason. I don't think that's necessarily been proven. So I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Is there anyone else from the public here that would like to speak? If so, please come forward. Limit your comments to things that haven't been discussed, and please give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Carmen May, and I live at 411 Homestead Court. So I am one of those who could step out in my front yard and look directly at that pole. And so there could be, if I'm over here, there are some trees. If I step here or out in the street, if I look right this direction, that pole is way up there. And no matter how close it is to his backyard or that row of trees, it's high. It's right there. It might as well be right up against his backyard. To us, it's a definite eyesore. To us, it's a definite lowering of our property values. So it's hard to be limited to what we can object to, right? So please put yourself in our place and use your head and think about all of the things that we cannot object to, in addition to what we have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this case? Anyone else present from the public would like to speak on this? If not, we will call the agent or applicant back up, and you'll have 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you again. Victor McAllister. So to answer your question is, I think council addressed that there's certain things that cannot be addressed regarding towers, property value being one of them, right? So again, I do want to go back and ask both the constituents as well as the board, what further concessions can we do? We've done everything we can. We've reduced the height. If we go down further, would it make you happy?
Excuse me, sir. Counselor, do you have a comment you'd like to make?
I do. Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. Just for the record, impact on property values can be considered by the board. They can be.
Okay.
Continue, please.
Okay. The question would be is what further concessions can we make to make the neighborhood happy? We want to be good neighbors. We want to provide a service. Okay. So my understanding is I'm here asking for a use exception, correct? Because I'm over the 120-foot threshold that's governed by this body, right? If I drop it to 120, you're still going to be looking at it. Riss? We're willing to drop it to 120 and move forward as administrative approval.
I have a question for staff.
Is that all your rebuttal, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll bring it back to the commission. And thank you for your comments, Mr. Aldridge.
If the applicant did reduce it down to 125 foot, would there be any reason for the commission to hear this case?
It's just to let you know, it's a good question. We would need some time to research that one. We would have to look into wireless plan and what the code has. 5 minutes, I would say, would be appropriate.
I would just, to me, the visual impact and the aesthetics and the height are important to the neighbors, but counties provide urban growth areas for rural cities for a reason. And Colwich pretty much can't grow to the west because of all the floodplain. In spite of the applicant's assertion that this is not developable, we on this board have seen plenty of plats for parcels this size. I think it is developable. And it would be an important growth area for the city sometime in the future, but not if there's a cell tower sitting in the middle of it. To me, that's the most important part, is preserving the city's options for development in the area that their comprehensive plan has already said, this is where we want to grow.
Scott, excuse me, did you say we want to recess for 5 minutes before
sir.
we just have any more discussion?
It looks like we have staff who are looking through the code right now. We have staff that are consulting with legal. But yes, I believe it would take about 5 minutes for us to get to a firm answer for you.
Should we just continue discussion on other matters on this case?
If you'd like, but yeah, probably a recess would work best. That way we can address any other questions that would come up.
Okay, good. We will recess for 5 minutes. If I can have your attention, I think we're ready to resume the meeting. Scott, do you want to reply to what the results of your discussion are?
You bet. So thank you very much for giving us the time to look into this. This was a little bit complicated. First thing that I would say is a disclaimer that I can't speak on behalf of the applicant, but you would have the option. One option would be to request a deferral of this item and defer it for at least a month. And a month is what we're recommending, because during that time, they would have the option of submitting an application in a shorter height for the administrative permit. Now, what the disclaimer with the administrative permit, though, is that there are criteria that need to be met in order for that permit to be granted. And if those criteria are not met, then there's a possibility that it could come back to the MAPC as a conditional use. So deferring it by at least a month would give the applicant an opportunity to submit the application, start working through the process, see how that turns out, and then they could always request a deferral or withdraw the MAPC application if they felt they wanted to go that route. Trying to think if there's anything else, but at this point, we cannot sit here and go through the review of the criteria and tell you whether or not it's likely headed one direction or the other. We just cannot do that. But those are at least two of the evident options, and I will turn to the staff and legal counsel to see if there's anything I missed.
Yes, so Scott, piggybacking off of that, what Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor, once again, piggybacking off of what Scott said, he described a potential avenue where there would be a continuance here if the applicant were interested in pursuing the route of applying for administrative permit with the 120-foot. Once again, it would we would need input from them if they want to go that route, or we'd prefer that input. As an alternative, the applicant stated today that they were interested in potentially having this at 120 feet. Were at the will of the commission, they could certainly consider approval or denial with that requested amendment in consideration as well. Just as a conditional use before the board today.
So would it be appropriate on our end to get the feedback from the applicant before we talk anymore?
Right, that's what I was going to suggest. I think we ought to call the applicant back up, and and we can clarify that if you need it. But what would be your pleasure on this? To continue on for a decision today, or do you want to take some time and bring back in an application for a shorter tower?
That's a good question. The question I would have real quick for staff is that you mentioned in regards to the 120-foot criteria. Can you list the criteria? And I mean, basically, if we come straight in at what has been applied.
I guess I'll take a crack at that answer. No, we cannot. We're gonna need to reference a different plan that we don't have here with us. It is an administrative permit.
Yes.
At 120 foot NRR. So that's a separate process from conditional use.
Okay, separate process.
Separate process.
Okay.
Different process. So I guess really it's the decision of how you want to proceed is kind of, it's in your hands. I mean, you could, as has been said, you could attempt that process and see how that goes, or you could, I suppose, amend your application here today for the 120 or however you might want to handle it. But no, we're not prepared to do that right now in this venue, no.
Okay. If we were to proceed today.
JR, if I could ask, would the administrative process then would not bring it back to the MAPC? That's something you would handle inside, right?
The administrative process itself, yes, but ultimately there's a possibility that it could come back to the MAPC. And as I read the code, and Kirk or Jeff, either one can correct me, if they're not allowed at a base, there's basically three different allowances. There's just a basic allowance for these towers, there's an administrative permit allowance for the towers, and then there's a conditional use allowance for the towers. I don't think that if they don't meet the base level, that they have to do the administrative permit. I believe they can apply directly for a conditional use if they chose to, because it's a public hearing process. The administrative permit itself is not a public hearing process.
Thank you. So are you clear on all this? What's
No,
your
sir,
pleasure?
I'm not clear on this.
Well, go ahead and please ask.
Okay, so you're looking at
Find out.
conditional use, which is basically what I'm used to, right? And we would redo the application, all of the information, resubmit, correct? Okay, based on,
If I've heard you right, you're talking about resubmitting a conditional use application?
is that what, no,
No.
okay.
That's what we have here in front of us. That's what's been submitted as conditional use.
That's correct.
At 195 feet.
Correct, and we've been asking for basically a variance of the conditional use permit, is that accurate?
No, if you,
Administrative permit is what you would be asking for, so, which is a separate application process.
correct, unless you wish to amend your request today
We
to a
can,
different
if we
height.
were to amend it, that would be the path of least resistance, but the question I would have is, by amending it with this body's, basically approval, what steps would need to be taken in order to, I mean, obviously, an application wise, or what additional information is required for the amendment to the conditional use permit?
I've got a question. If we were to make a decision today and to either approve or deny, if we were to deny, would his avenue for going for just an administrative approval, would that door still be open to him?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. I believe that's the case, but let me check real quick on the application requirements, if I may.
And the other option is to defer and, yeah.
So Kirk, not to interrupt you, but before you do that, can we address the question I think that's being asked is what needs to happen to amend the current conditional use from 195 to 120?
Kirk Sponsel, Deputy County Councilor. I think we can take into consideration his announcement. I don't find this inconsistent with other situations in which sometimes the commission asks the applicants if they're willing to do this or that in regards to their application. They say yes, and then we go on our way with our considerations.
And I'd also like to point out, as Mr. Joe Johnson has indicated, if you proceed with this application, even with amended, it's a conditional use case, so this is one of multiple steps, and the ultimate decision would be made by the Board of County Commissioners.
Okay, that being said, Cindy?
So I want to know if there's a possibility that this could be approved, I just want to understand, with administrative adjustment? No. Oh, an administrative permit. So is it possible that we could take a vote on it today and potentially vote for the lesser height anyways? We can do that, right?
I believe so, yes, correct.
I think the
Okay,
basic question for the applicant is, do you want more time? Would you rather have us defer this in order to figure out your options? Or not?
That's a good question. Golly, I tell you what, that's why we're trying to decipher the processes, right? And I think we're all sort of on the same boat. And unfortunately, it seems to be a staff and legal question. I mean, I'm sort of with the lady on this side. I apologize, I can't see your name, but if we were to vote based on the adjustment of height, I'm just trying to think, basically making a conditional approval based on this, we would still have to go through all the typical building permit process, correct?
You would have to go through the building permit process regardless.
No matter what,
Yeah.
understood, but the condition of the approval would be based on the information provided of the height of the tower. Am I missing something?
Right, and just.
No, I think that's an option for you today. If you want us to consider a request for a lower, for a 125-foot tower, we could consider that today, or we can defer this for 30 days.
That's like being on the hot seat because I'm not, again, I'm still trying to follow the process. So forgive me.
Strictly
So-
speaking, it's not up to you, it's up to us, but we
Yeah.
wanted your opinion.
There you go. Let's go with what she says.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring it back to the commission, and is short of any further discussion, I think we've had a lot of input on what the alternatives are here. Would somebody like to try to make a motion on this?
I'd move to approve with the 125 foot, or is it, what, I'm sorry? 120 foot. And by doing that, that'll send it back to the county commissioners and they get to make the call on it.
Second.
I'd like an alternative motion.
Okay, just before we do that, we had some discussion. I saw Mr. Warren's hand come up first. Okay, go ahead.
All right, my mental question here is whether the alternative should be to simply straight deny or whether to defer. And in the interests of trying to clarify a lot of confusion, I would like to move that we defer for 30 days or the closest next meeting 30 days from now.
I second.
Okay, we have a substitute motion by Foster, yeah. A lot of things going around here, and second by Mr. Williams Bay. Is there any further discussion on that? Yes, Mr. Warren.
I look at these things and I try to figure out, try to break them down to their lowest denomination. We got a request for a 95-foot tower, which to me makes a lot more sense than 320-foot towers to cover the same area, because by and large, I think people are opposed to towers versus the height of the tower. So for me, one tower at 195 is better than three at 120. But if the applicant is willing to go that, the original motion, I would not support the motion to defer or deny. And I'll be in support of the original motion.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on the substitute motion. We have a motion by Ms. Foster and a second by Mr. Williams Bay. Do we want to take a roll call vote on that? I think we should.
Yes, sir. Dool?
No.
Foster?
Aye.
McKay is absent. Green is absent. Bill Johnson?
No.
Blick?
No.
Nix is absent. Fox?
No.
Warren? Joe Johnson?
No.
Miles?
No.
Zimbelman? Aldrich?
No.
Williams Bay?
Yes.
Motion fails. I've
Right.
got 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
So
7,
now
8,
we will
9.
go back to the original motion. Who seconded the original motion? Did we get somebody? Oh, okay.
Kirk
Ms.
Sponsel.
Miles.
Kirk
Okay.
Sponsel, Deputy County Counselor. Point of clarification, I believe the motion was to approve the application with the height of 120 feet. Did that also include the other conditions listed by staff as proposed recommendation if there were an approval?
Is Mr. Bill Johnson's
Yes.
motion?
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it did.
And second's agreeable with that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Again, let's do a roll call on this.
Dool?
Yes.
Foster?
No.
McKay is absent. Green is absent. Bill Johnson?
Yes.
Blick?
Yes.
Nix is absent. Fox?
No.
Warren? Joe Johnson?
Yes.
Miles?
Yes.
Zimbelman? Aldrich?
Yes.
Williams Bay? Motion passes 8-3.
Okay, I think we have all of the cases dealt with at this point. There's one other matter that's on the agenda, and that is a discussion of an MAPC subcommittee alternate. Ms. Foster had approached me about appointing alternates. There's 2 alternates to the subdivision, and I guess at one time there was alternates to advanced plans. We've discussed that, and I have agreed to be an alternate to advanced plans, and I believe Ms. Foster's agreeable with that.
Yes, sir.
So at this point, we will have one, and my recommendation would be on this that we wait for some period of time until the results of the election and possible appointments settle out, and maybe consider that after the first of the year. This requires a vote of the, no?
For the alternates, it's actually for advanced plans, the chairperson of advanced plans. So in this case, Ms. Foster would be able to appoint them.
So theoretically, I would be able to draft somebody from subdivision committee and make them come to advanced plans, but I would really rather not do that. So if anyone cares to volunteer, please let me know. Otherwise, I think we're okay now with Mr. Dool being our one alternate. But in a general rule, please, everyone, try and be more proactive about letting us know if you're not going to be at a meeting. That would solve a lot of this problem without us having to appoint alternates. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob, for
I echo
volunteering.
your last comment, and things are certainly different now that we can't participate in the meeting remotely. So please let staff know if you're not going to be able to be here. With that, I believe we are adjourned.